Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another book haul. I haven't posted a book haul since like mid-June and it's been about 2 months and I have acquired so many books in the last couple of weeks. You know, ever since starting my bookstore job, I feel like in a way it's reignited my passion for books all over again, and I'm discovering so many books while I'm working in the bookstore that I've never heard of before that I'm so intrigued by. And now because I'm working in the bookstore, not only do I get discounts on books that I'm buying, but I also do get access to ARCs through the bookstore. So there are just so many books to talk about and so many books to get through, so let's jump right in. Some of the first books that I wanted to talk about were some of the books that I got from Book of the Month. So two of the books that I got in the month of July, I ended up getting Trope Sick, which is a romance that I've been really excited to read, but I have not yet actually read this one. And then I also ended up picking up this one called Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt. And this is a story that is actually narrated by Death. I don't even really know what that means, but I've heard that this book is like one of those literary fiction books that is so hard-hitting and that's gonna make me cry. I actually do kind of want to read this one pretty soon, so hopefully I can get to this one before the end of August. And then for the month of August, I ended up going with both of these books. I got Almost Life because this one is a sapphic romance that I've just been hearing such great things about. I think it's more like literary fiction, but it has like a really beautiful, heartbreaking sapphic story at the center of this. And you know, I've just been in such a mood this summer. Like I have declared this summer sapphic summer because I've been reading so many amazing sapphic books this year. I've heard that this is kind of like The Heart's Invisible Furies, but it's women instead of men, and that really intrigues me. And then I also ended up picking up a copy of The Bones Beneath My Skin by TJ Klune because, you know, ever since reading We Burn So Bright by TJ Klune, I've been craving something more like this. And from what I read about the premise of this book, it kind of sounds like it has a similar vibe. I don't know, this one says it takes place in the spring of 1995, which was the year that I was born. It says we follow this guy Nate who has lost everything. His parents are dead, his only brother wants nothing to do with him, and he's just been fired from his job as a journalist in Washington, D.C. And it says with nothing left to lose, he returns to his family's summer cabin outside the small mountain town of Roseland, Oregon. And it says the cabin should be empty, but it's not. Inside is a man named Alex, and with him is this extraordinary 10-year-old girl who calls herself Artemis Death Vader. And then I think it's like a found family story between the three of them, which honestly, like, that sounds incredible. I've also heard that this book is pretty weird, and I tend to like the weirder books. And then I also ended up buying a few different books from Arvar recently. I finally ended up picking up a copy of Japanese Gothic because this is like one of my favorite horror books that I read this year, and Arvar had a really special edition. Like, genuinely look at how stunning this is. Oh my god. I don't think I'll ever get over how beautiful this is under the dust jacket. Like, this is one of the most gorgeous books I think that I own now. I just love it. Oh my god, like I'm almost tempted to like keep this on display on my shelf without the dust jacket on because this is so beautiful. And this is like one of my top favorite horror books that I've read this year, so I'm so glad that I finally own it. And then another one of my favorite horror books is Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. I'm so glad that Aardvark had this one as a selection too because I was reading this book for Summerween and I was only halfway through reading it on my Kindle when I ordered this book from Aardvark because of how much I was loving it. And so I'm very happy to finally own this book as well. And then I also ended up grabbing a copy of Long Island Girls by Gabrielle Korn. And this is one that I did end up reading. I can include the link down below for that vlog. I think I gave this one around like 3.5 stars. Oh my god, I loved the beginning of this book so much. This one takes place in Long Island and we follow these two young girls. This is one of those like sapphic, like yearning type of stories that I've just been so in the mood for. And I think if you're the kind of person that really appreciates a story that's about music and about a character's passion for music, then I think you would really like this one too. I was also really excited because Crown ended up sending me a finished copy of the book 5, which I was really excited about because 5 is a thriller that I read earlier this year and I actually really enjoyed this one a lot. This one almost feels more like a literary thriller because we're following these 5 different strangers who meet at this train stop one day, and then you kind of get like the backstory for all of these characters' lives and you're trying to figure out who dies. It's a really interesting thriller and I would highly recommend. All right, and the next up, Atria ended up sending me a few different things that I'm so excited about. One of them is a finished copy of this new thriller called One of the Family by Mark Edwards. This is not one that I've had the chance to read yet, but this is one that I'm really looking forward to because it says a week in paradise with the family from hell. I do tend to love that trope, by the way, where you have this character who's like the girlfriend or the boyfriend of somebody that comes from this very wealthy family and then they have to go and like spend time with them and it's awkward and weird and there's something more sinister going on. And this one does especially intrigue me because it says we're following this guy named Patrick and he has this girlfriend named Holly and she invites him on a luxury luxury holiday in a remote and beautiful part of Scotland, and he has no idea that he is about to be plunged into a nightmare of a family, a sinister behavior, and a plot to murder. This sounds like it's gonna be really chaotic, and I'm very excited to read it. All right, and then we have this romance book called The Great Outdoors by Kayla Olson. I was kind of nervous with picking this one because I'm pretty sure I've read 2 other books by this author before that I just didn't really care for, but this one in particular did intrigue me because this is one of those romances where they're gonna be like hiking together, they're gonna be like out in the wilderness together. It says she signs herself up for this week-long guided wilderness adventure in the high Sierras of California, and I guess she's the type of girl that like does not usually appreciate going camping. And then it says she has this tour guide named August Thorne, and he lives for adventure and he always keeps professional distance from the trekkers under his care, but there's just something about Sadie. I don't know, this one intrigues me because I do tend to like books that take place like in the wilderness, like that involve hiking, which is weird because like I don't really enjoy hiking myself. I just like reading about it for some reason. Oh my gosh, and this next romance, this is another one where like I took a risk, okay? This one, I don't know if it's gonna be for me or not, but there's this romance called Drawn Together, and I was just like, you know what? I'll take a chance. I'll read something that feels a little bit outside of my comfort zone, because in this story, we're following this woman named Marful, and it says she's the daughter of a powerful businessman, and then it says until the afternoon that she's abducted in Central Park, and it says days later she opens her eyes in a hospital in New Orleans with no memory of what happened. And so it says in the wake of her attack, her father tightens security and assigns her a bodyguard, this guy Sebastian Moore. So it's kind of like one of those stories where like she gets abducted, her family's like super wealthy, and then she's like gonna fall in love with the bodyguard, I guess. I don't know why, this kind of feels like the romance that I would have read like maybe 10 years ago. Like it's not necessarily something I would gravitate towards now, but I thought, you know, why not? I'll give this a shot. And apparently I think this one's already getting adapted into like a movie or like a TV series. So this is either gonna be really fun and like forbidden and juicy, or it's gonna be really ridiculous. And then the next thing Atria sent is this collection of short horror stories. It's called Something Followed Us Home. This one that I have is an ARC. It's gonna be publishing in the month of September. I'm very excited for this because you know that I love a collection of short horror stories, like sign me up. And this one sounds especially promising because it says dive into the chilling depths of Latin horror. So we have some authors that I've read from before. Like we have Isabel Cañas, who has a story in here, Mariana Enriquez. We also have Cynthia Paleo, which I'm pretty sure I've read something from her too. This one says each story reimagines immigration, colonization, faith, and folklore as the fears we inherit and carry across borders and generations. Oh, this one sounds like it's gonna be so good. Like I just love a good collection of short horror stories, so I'm very excited to read this one. And then they also ended up sending me this ARC copy of Triple Threat by Katie Chandler. This one's going on sale in December. And this one says that it's a steamy sports romance about a disgraced tennis star, the ex-pro who becomes her coach, and the soulmate they share. Like, bitch! And it says perfect for fans of Challengers, and Carrie Soto is back. I mean, come on. You know, anything that gets compared to Challengers, I'm like, add it to the TBR immediately. Like, that is all the pitch that I need, because Challengers is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've actually put it into my top 4 on Letterboxd. Like, that's how crazy I am about Challengers. And so the idea of reading something juicy like Challengers, like, I'm so here for this. Like, what do you mean the soulmate they share? Tell me more. And then the book that Atria sent me that I am possibly the most excited about is this one called Between the Lines by Haley Cass. This one's not publishing until February next year, but like, oh my god, how exciting is this? Because Haley Cass is like one of my favorite sapphic romance authors. This is the author of one of my favorite sapphic romances of all time, On the Same Page, and I'm pretty sure this is her first book that she's getting traditionally published, because I think all of her other books have been independently published or like she's self-published. I'm not entirely sure, but like this is the first book that she has published with Atria, so like how exciting is that? This one says it's a steamy sapphic academic romance where slow burn chemistry, witty banter, and emotional vulnerability collide as 2 lonely professors find connection, healing, and love in unexpected places. And this one also takes place in upstate New York. Like, come on. This sounds like a book that was written just for me. I can't wait. Haley Cass is definitely a romance author that like I will drop everything to read her stuff. You know, like I really love the way that she writes her romances, so I can't wait. All right, and then next up, Penguin Random House ended up sending me a few exciting things as well. One of the ones they sent is this new thriller called 9 Lives by Catherine Steadman, and this is one that I actually read during Summerween. This one actually started off really strong. Like I thought this was gonna be a new favorite of mine, because this is one of those thrillers that has like a typical kind of like thriller setup where like you have this character who's kind of like spying on her neighbors, but it's kind of funny because it's called 9 Lives because she uses her cat to kind of like spy on her neighbors. I thought the ending was a little bit underwhelming, but I still think overall this was a pretty fun time. And then speaking of thrillers, they also sent this one called The Wedding Week. This one says long buried secrets resurface when a woman returns home for her sister's lavish resort wedding in the Everglades, where gossiping aunties and Burmese pythons aren't the only threats. premise. You already know that I love thrillers or any books in general that involve weddings. I just think it makes everything so much more fun. It says her younger sister calls with shocking news. She's getting married in 48 hours and their mother is dying. This one sounds like it could be for me, and also look at how gorgeous that cover is. Oh my god, I love all these colors. They also ended up sending this very cool special edition of World War Z. Like, honestly, look at this. It's so beautiful. It has this hardcover and then you slide it off and it looks like that. I think this is like the 20th anniversary edition of World War Z, which is really cool because I've actually never read World War Z, even though I do enjoy the zombie trope in horror, and I was a really big fan of the movie World War Z. It's all annotated by like the author himself, which I think is really cool. And then this one also does include some colorful artwork throughout the book as well, which I also think is really nice. Then they also ended up sending this one that's called All This Want and I Can't Get None by T. Clark. And this is another one that's a short story collection. This one says it's a short story collection that explores the feverish hunger and dizzying pleasure of girlhood and queer coming of age in a small town from an acclaimed emerging writer. It says that this one is also set mostly in and around small working class neighborhoods just outside of New York City. So I'm really excited to check out this one. And then speaking of short stories, they also ended up sending me this one called Can I even say this book title without getting demonetized? I don't know. But this is from the author Mac Crane. And this is such a bold cover, by the way. Like, this is a bold book cover and a bold title, and I respect the hell out of this. And this one is another collection of short stories. It says that this is a full frontal confrontation of the ways that we perform desire and shame. This is from the same author as A Sharp Endless Need, which is a book that I do still own that I haven't read yet, but I've been so curious about. And this one is a collection of 16 different short stories. Also, look at the full image of this cover. Like, wow, that's crazy. When I was talking about this cover to my friend Brittany, I was like, do you think this is a back? Or do you think they're grabbing some ass on the book cover? Like, you can't really tell. I think it's a back. And then they also ended up sending me a copy of this one called Love You More by Emily Giffin. And this is one of those books, oh my god, it kind of sounds like One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid or something, because it says we're following this woman who is newly engaged to a man she adores when she receives a call from her first love with news that shatters her carefully ordered world. I mean, maybe it's not like One True Loves because she doesn't think that her first love is like dead, but like she's hearing news from her first love that kind of like changes her world and like rocks her world, and now she's engaged to this new man. It just sounds like it's gonna be kind of fun. Also, the main character's name in this book is Billy, and like, tell me why. I just love the name Billy for a girl so much. I love any names like that that are kind of like typically boy names that are used for girls, like Drew or Billy or like Theo. I don't know, those are the first ones I thought of off the top of my head, but like, I love that for girls. But yeah, anyways, I'm really excited to read this one. I think I actually have read a book from this author before. It's been a long time, but I do remember enjoying it a lot. And then they also ended up sending me this one called Retro, and this is another one that has a really unique premise. It says an out-of-work actress gets a job as a tour guide for an ultra-luxury time travel company, only to discover her trips to the past could upend her present. This is a speculative debut novel. Like, how cool is that? What do you mean she's gonna be a tour guide for a time travel company? Like, shut up. This sounds like it's gonna be so good. I feel like there are so many debut novels coming out this year that just have really cool and really unique premises, and I love to see that. And then Little Brown ended up sending me this new thriller called The House Guest by Jennifer Pashley, and this is from the author of The Watcher. This one says an aspiring chef finds she has bitten off more than she can chew when her gig as a private cook to a best-selling author turns deadly. Oh, this one also says it takes place at a mansion on a secluded beach on Cape Cod. Like, oh my god, the vibes of this one are gonna be so good. I can already feel it. This is actually one that I'm hoping to read really soon because the premise just really draws me in. And I love the idea of following a chef who's working for a best-selling author. Like, I think that's a really fun premise. This book cover is also killer, by the way. I love this. Look at all that pink. The way that it's like the sky is pink. Oh my god, I love it. All right, and then St. Martin's Press also ended up sending me a few things. Speaking of thrillers, this is another one that I'm really looking forward to. It's The Woman in White by Sarah Pekkanen. I feel like this author is very, very hit or miss for me, and the last few have kind of been a miss. This is one that I'm excited to read. I've been hearing some really great early praise for this book, and I'm curious about this one because it involves something that sounds kind of strange. It's like a Sixth Sense kind of a thing. As it says, in 1964, 4 remarkable young women at a prestigious university became the subjects of parapsychology experiments by a visionary scientist. On the cusp of a historic breakthrough, the women mysteriously vanished and the program was erased from history. And now it says decades later, we have this character Riley Bell, who is newly divorced and looking for a fresh start. She accepts a caretaker job for an elderly woman named Betty. But it says things are weird because Betty seems like she's from another era. She's never heard of the internet. It says, why has Betty lived in such profound isolation for so many years? As the story unfolds across 2 time timelines, old secrets rise to the surface. I don't know, I am very invested in the idea of like what the freak happened to these women in the 1960s and like what is going on. And then they also ended up sending this one called Destination Funeral. This one's by Paige Harbison, who's the same author as The Other Side of Now, which is a book that I really enjoyed. And I think something that's really fun about this author's books is that they have some kind of like element to them, like a time travel-y thing or like a time loop kind of a thing. And this one is actually about these friends who like gather for this funeral and then they get stuck in this time loop situation together. It says, trapped in a time loop with no end and no instructions, they're forced to confront the betrayals, breakups, and buried truths that shattered them all those years ago. I do tend to love shit like this, like give me a time loop situation, I'm all here for it. Then they also ended up sending me this one called I Am the Monster Under the Bed. This one's coming out in September. I was laughing because of how freaky this cover is. Oh my god, I just noticed this shadow, like ew, don't like that. This one says, something lives under Willa's bed. As an adult, her fondest childhood memories are of the invisible entity under her bed who taught her how to read. Oh my god, absolutely not. It says, now 32 years old, Willa is a reclusive but successful painter until a bombshell news report exposes her identity as the controversial survivor of the unresolved Rapture mystery slayings, a small town tragedy that splashed across headlines her senior year of high school. 6 teenagers died in the woods while Willa walked free, and everyone thinks that she killed them. It says, as her past pulls her back to the place she swore she'd never return, Willa is drawn toward the monster she'd left behind and becoming the villain her hometown always believed her to be. Ooh, bitch. This one sounds good. I might have to bump this one up my TBR actually because everything about that premise just like really sucked me in. And then they also ended up sending me some nonfiction stuff that I requested. This one is called Sit Right Here, and it's 6 mindfulness practices to help you write more and suffer less. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, and I especially don't read a lot of like self-help type of nonfiction. It's just not really what I'm into. But when it comes to like nonfiction books about writing specifically, like that is definitely something that intrigues me because, you know, I do enjoy the creative writing process. Like I actually went to school for a creative writing degree. I mean, did I finish that degree? No, but like that was what I went to school for, you know? So like I definitely enjoy reading about writing and like reading about the writing process and like how to get better with like having a routine with writing. And then I also ended up getting this copy of Who's That Girl by Thea Glassman. And this one is a nonfiction book that is all about the TV show New Girl, which like how exciting. Like I love that there have been so many books publishing recently that are nonfiction books about some of my favorite shows. I recently read that one last year that was all about the Vampire Diaries. I also just read that nonfiction book that was about Supernatural, and like I just really love reading these nonfiction books about the TV shows that I'm really obsessed with. And New Girl is like one of my all-time favorite comfort shows. It's a show that I've come back to like again and again throughout the years. And so I'm really excited to read this and to like learn even more about the show. And then next up, Bramble ended up sending me a copy of this one called Deadlift by Cleo Evans. This one is an ARC copy that I have. This actually doesn't go on sale until January. But when I tell you that the only reason I picked up this book is because on the back it says Lights Out meets Butcher and Blackbird in this steamy serial killer rom-com. I don't think I've ever read anything by this author before, but like the comparison to Lights Out, like honestly, that's enough to make me want to pick up a book because of how much fun I had with Lights Out. And even though I wasn't the biggest fan of Butcher and Blackbird, like I am definitely intrigued by the serial killer type of romances. I just think they can be very fun. So I hope that this one is also fun. And then Dutton ended up sending me a copy of She Haunts Me Still by D. Elizabeth, which I am so excited to have this in my hands because if you just watched my most anticipated books video, then you will know that this was on that list. This is one that got put on my radar because it's a horror book that involves like dark academia vibes. I've heard that it's gothic and it involves vampires and it's queer. It sounds like there's gonna be queer romance and vampires. And also look at this thing that the publisher sent with it, like this little art. Oh my gosh, like what is happening here? I don't know what's going on, but I like the vibes. So I am very excited to read this one. And I also wanted to mention that Dutton was also very kind enough to send me a finished copy of the new Riley Sager, The Unknown, but I actually have already lent it to my sister so that she can start reading it because we are going to be having the Riley Sager annual live show with my mom and my sister. It's going to be happening probably the first weekend of September, so I thought I would let you know, but I'm very excited to read The Unknown by Riley Sager. Oh my gosh, I'm like counting down the days. I'm probably going to be reading it at the very end of August. Oh, I can't wait. All right, and the Nightfire ended up sending me a copy of this one called It Looks Like You in the Dark by Matilda Zeller. And this one is an ARC copy that I have. This one's going on sale in October. Can I just say, first of all, this is one of my favorite book titles of all time. Like that is so creepy. It looks like you in the dark. Ew. Like I don't even like saying it. That's creepy. And this one says this is a propulsive indigenous horror debut, expertly blending native Alaskan folklore and supernatural thrills. So like how how exciting is that? Another debut horror novel that sounds like it's gonna be incredible. I love everything about this. Like, I love the title, I love the cover. All right, and then Wednesday Books ended up sending me a copy of this one called Lucy Klein Necromancer. This one is an arc that I have and it's going on sale in September. And I think this one is a young adult kind of like mystery horror story, but the main reason, like the only reason I added this book to my TBR is because, as you can see on the back here, it says for fans of supernatural and true crime. So like naturally anything that compares itself to the TV show Supernatural, I will add to my TBR. That's the law, I don't make the rules. Been about 2 years since Lucy's twin sister was presumed dead. And then it says when another girl who looks just like her sister goes missing under mysterious circumstances and ghostly dreams begin to plague Lucy, she throws herself back into the investigation. So this sounds like it's gonna have a really good like sister story, which also does kind of sound like Supernatural with like the good brother dynamic. So like I am really curious to read this one. All right, and then Avon ended up sending me a few books that I'm excited about. 2 of them are romances. One of those romances is this one called Experiments in Offline Dating. This one intrigues me because it says a podcaster embarks on a matchmaking tour of Ireland and gets trapped with a grump who pushes all of her buttons in this sharp-witted enemies to lovers rom-com. I do love a good enemies to lovers, and the fact that it takes place in Ireland, it just sounds like it's gonna have good atmosphere. And then they also sent this one called How to Find a Romance in a Bookshop. Oh my gosh, this cover is so cute. I love the yellow. It says after a social media post gone wrong, a literary agent runs away to look after a seaside bookshop for the summer and forms an unlikely friendship with a charming novelist struggling with his latest idea. Oh my gosh, I love romances that follow writers. First of all, like he's a struggling novelist, that sounds fun. But then also like it takes place in a bookstore. Like say less, sign me up. There's also this tiny little dog on the cover. I don't know if you can see it, but it's so cute. And then they also ended up sending me this one called The Ship of Death by Kyle Winkler, and this one comes out in September. This one sounds so unique. It says horror movie meets the Blair Witch Project in this supernatural chokehold of a book told entirely through found documents. It says it's the cursed story of an unwitting couple ensnared by a mysterious tabletop role-playing game who are commanded, as the game's intentions become clearer, to do the unthinkable. What the heck? This sounds so intriguing. Like I love stories that are told entirely through like founded documents and like unique styles of storytelling like that. And I do also love the idea of this creepy like role-playing game, like making them do things that they typically wouldn't do. Like that sounds so freaky. All right, and then before I do jump into all of the books that I've bought this month and all of the arcs that I've accumulated from my bookstore, I also wanted to take a minute to show you some books that I've got from the library recently, because libraries are hurting more than ever right now, and it is such a good time to go and support your local library. I feel especially grateful because my local library always has access to so many new releases and so many exciting things. Like all of these books that I previously just read for a video, I was able to get from my library, which is amazing. It's a huge money saver for sure. And if you missed the vlog where I read all 3 of these books, I will have it linked down below. It was actually a vlog where I was reading some of your all-time favorite books, and that was a really fun video. Then I also just recently made a video where I read Decomposition Book, and this is a horror book that I was able to pick up from my library. I can't remember if this video is gonna go up before this book haul or it might go up right after, but I will have it linked down below if I've already posted the video where I read Decomposition Book. All right, and then some of the books I have bought recently. One of the books that I bought was actually a book that I found at Value Village for only $4. I found this book of the month copy of Annie Bot, and Annie Bot is like one of my favorite sci-fi books. So as soon as I saw it there, I was like, oh my gosh, it's only $4, like immediately buy. I'm just so glad to finally own a physical copy of this because this is one of my favorite sci-fi books. And this is one of those sci-fi stories where you're following this character named Annie, and she's this sex bot for this man named Doug. And this story obviously has a lot of like feminist themes and a lot of commentary, and I just loved this. Like there was something about the writing. Once I finished this book, I already had the feeling like it was one that I wanted to reread again in the future. And then I also ended up getting a copy of Knock Knock Open Wide from my bookstore because I saw this on our used books shelf, and I was so excited about it because this is one of my favorite horror books that I've ever read. I actually checked it out from the library when I read it originally, so I never had a physical copy of it, but this is a horror book that I absolutely love, and if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend checking this one out because it is so creepy and eerie and weird, and it's everything that I love in horror. I also ended up picking up a copy of 13 Little Love Stories, and this one is actually an anthology of short stories that are all inspired by Taylor Swift songs. So we have 13 different authors that contributed to this collection of stories and 13 different Taylor Swift songs. I actually made an entire video dedicated to this on my Patreon where I had my sister cover the songs with washi tape, and then I was trying to read the short stories and guess which Taylor Swift song inspired each one of the stories. I had so much fun with this. Oh oh my gosh, like not all of the stories worked for me, but I had the time of my life as a Swiftie, like trying to guess which songs inspired each story. My only thing with this is that this one is a young adult romance as opposed to an adult romance, even though some of them do read a little bit more adult, but like I really wish that they would make this with adult romances instead of young adult. And then two books that I also recently bought from my bookstore that went on to become some of my top favorite books of this year are We Burn So Bright by TJ Klune and Sunburn. It's actually ridiculous that both of these books might be in my top 3 favorite books that I've read this year. I've been thinking about both of these books every single day since I finished them. You know what's so funny is that this book, Sunburn, was actually recommended to me not only by so many of my coworkers in the bookstore, but then also I ended up reading this book because it was one of your all-time favorite books, so I was reading it for that video, and now this might be my #1 favorite book that I've read this year. Like, this has some of the best sapphic yearning that I've ever read in my life. Like, this book hit me on a level that was so deep. And then same with We Burn So Bright. You know, I actually only read this one because I saw it in my bookstore sitting on the shelf and I was like, oh, what is that? It looks really short. And I didn't realize that TJ Klune had published a new novella this year. I read the description of it and I was like, yeah, that sounds like something that I could like, and I read it and I bawled my eyes out. I read this one during Summerween. I can have the vlog linked down below, but like, oh my god, this book just hit me right where it hurts. And then I also recently bought a few more books from my bookstore. I recently got Heap Earth Upon It, and then I also bought Lost and Found. And of course, you know, I had to buy this one because after loving Sunburn as much as I did, this is the newest book from this author, and I've heard that this one is even more like dark and weird and sad than Sunburn is, so like I was immediately intrigued and I really want to read this one soon. And then I also had to get a copy of Lost and Found by Tara DeWitt because this is actually the 3rd book in the romance series that I'm really obsessed with. We have Savor It, and then we have Left of Forever, and now this is the 3rd book. It takes place in Spoons, Oregon, and like, look at those sprayed edges. Oh my god, like that is stunning. I love when they're able to pull off this kind of like ombre happening on the spine. Like, how do they do that? I don't know, but I love it, love it, love it, and I can't wait to read this one soon. Like, I'm actually dying to read this book. All right, and then this last ginormous stack of books, these are all the books that I've been able to get my hands on at the bookstore as ARCs, because like I was mentioning, now that I'm working in the bookstore as a bookseller, I have access to the ARCs shelf that we have at our store, and our store gets hundreds of ARCs sent all the time. Publishers are always sending the store so many ARCs that the management was like, please take anything because we don't even have space on the shelf for all of these ARCs that we're getting. So I took full advantage of that because there have been so many books coming through that I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited to read that. Like this one called Look What the Cat Dragged In. This is the new book from Jason Rekulik and it's coming out in October. I actually just recently read this for a reading vlog, so you will hear my thoughts on this very soon if you haven't already. But this one is a thriller and horror book that I've been really looking forward to. The story also involves this cat. I feel like there's been a lot of horror novels recently that I've noticed that have cats on the cover. I also did end up getting this one, If Books Could Kill. I got the ARC from my bookstore and I was able to read this one in a reading vlog, and I really did enjoy this one for the most part because this is another one of those books that's like part thriller and part romance, and I just love that combination these days. I also did get the ARC copy of Kiss Slay Replay by Rachel Harrison, and unfortunately this was not the book for me. Oh my gosh, I DNF'd it after 100 pages. Like, I actually could not stand the writing in this book. I also ended up grabbing a copy of Bad Words, and this one is publishing in the month of October. I think this one is more of like a literary romance type of story, but I've heard this being described as like perfect for fans of Emily Henry, and Emily Henry even is the blurb on the front cover here. This one just really sparks my interest because it says we're following this guy named Parker, and it says his debut novel was meant to define his career until this critic named Selena, she wrote this blistering review that made it the flop of the decade, and it says now 4 years later his new book is his shot at redemption, and for Selena, reviewing him again as a professional risk that she can't refuse. And I think it's like this romance that starts to form between them, and that intrigues me so much. Like, what do you mean? I love books that follow writers, so I'm very excited to read this. I also picked up a copy of American Spirits, which this is one that got put on my radar recently because of my friend Jess. She actually messaged me on Instagram and she was like, have you heard of this? I think you would love it, because this one is about this fangirl who gets the chance to work for one of her favorite pop stars, and it just sounds like one of those books that's gonna have a lot of commentary on like fangirl culture in general, so I am very intrigued by this one. This one's also from the same author as Perfume and Pain, which is a book that I have not yet read, but I do own that one as well. And then, oh my god, I was able to get my hands on an early copy of Understory by Chloe Benjamin. I am very excited about this one because I have read a book from this author before that I really enjoyed. I just talked about this book in my most anticipated books for the rest of the year, so I can't wait to read it. It's kind of like a light sci-fi that sounds like it's gonna have a lot of commentary about humanity, which is like my favorite. Then I also got my hands on an ARC of Maisie Hollywood by Tananarive Due, and this is another one that I just mentioned in that most anticipated video. This one's coming out September 22nd, and this one says it's a literary thriller following the grandson of a famous black actress from the 1920s to the 1940s. Now he's a filmmaker himself who returns to his grandmother's cabin retreat in the California mountains only to encounter the legacy of her rage born in old Hollywood. Oh my god, this sounds like it's gonna be so good and so right up my alley. And then we have this one, Possession Island. This one's coming out in December, and this is another one that I just mentioned on my most anticipated video. Like, there are so many books coming through that I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited to read that one. This one takes place on this island called Possession Island, and it says it's in the remote Pacific Northwest, and it was the setting of her late mother's wildly popular vampire novel. So it says she's returning home because her best friend was murdered, and she's caught in the crosshairs of a police investigation. This just sounds like it's gonna have really great atmosphere, and I am obsessed with this book cover, like one of my top favorite covers of this year. So cool. And then I also got my hands on an ARC copy of Crone by Keith Rawson, which this is the same author as Coffin Moon, which was like one of my favorite horror books that I've read last year, so I've been really looking forward to this one. And this one says it's a haunting, fearsome story of a father searching for his missing daughter and finding darkness from both human and not. I just really love the way that this author writes horror, so like I can't wait to read this one. I also was able to find an ARC copy of this one called Devour Me. This one's actually going on sale at the end of August. I'm not entirely sure if this one is adult or if it's young adult romance, and this one does feel like it might be a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but I've been so curious about it. I saw my friend Jan just gave this book 5 stars. On the back here, it does say the tropes are shadow daddy and unrequited insta-love, which like I don't know what the heck that means, but it says age gap, wide shoes, and it's polyamory, it's male, male, female. They're a dysfunctional throuple? Like, oh my god, I need to know. I also, when I was flipping in the beginning, it shows the star signs of the main characters, and like our main character girl, Birdie, she's a Capricorn, which like, so am I. So like, I just really want to read this. I don't know, I really want to know. I love following books with thruples, by the way. Like, give me all of the thruple book recommendations. I want more of them. And then I also got my hands on an ARC copy of Fruit Fly by Josh Silver, and this one was actually put on my radar by my friend Lily. She sent me a message on Instagram and was like, have you heard of this? Because it says a washed up author will stop at nothing to claw her way back to relevancy, even if it means appropriating a young gay man's tragic story. So I think what's happening is that she's like catfishing this man, pretending to be another guy for research for her book because she's writing like a male-male dynamic in the story. Like, oh my god. This one says Fruit Fly will appeal to fans of Yellowface, which is like one of my favorite books ever. So like, say less. I can't wait to read this. Also, look at how cool, even on the ARC copy of this, there's all these like flies. And then the last book that I picked up is this one called The Need. And this is a horror book that's publishing in September that I'm so curious about. I don't even know how to describe this. It says the need is a gift. The need is a power. And it's like there's some people that are born with this need to eat other people, I think. It's like cannibalism. I don't really know, but I really want to read this book soon because it sounds unhinged and kind of ridiculous and like exactly like my kind of book. All right, so those are all of the books that I have hauled recently. Oh my gosh, it was a lot, I know. There are so many exciting books coming out this year. Like, I'm overwhelmed. So you'll have to let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think I should prioritize, because clearly I have so many books to read this fall. I just feel so grateful to get the opportunity to like work with so many publishers because of my YouTube channel, but then also getting to work in the bookstore and getting access to like even more ARCs. Like, I just feel so lucky and I'm so grateful, and I feel like my love and my passion for books is just like reignited all over again. So thank you so much for watching this book haul. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye!